Welcome to the Emotional Eating Unwrapped podcast. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, an emotional eating and weight loss coach for women looking to fall in love with eating, create healthy attachments with food, and lose weight sustainably. Hello and welcome to another new episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, and today's episode is about something that most of us live with really, really quietly and almost never talk about. And it's that feeling that you get when you have that fire in your belly, you have that sense of desire, and you immediately feel like you don't deserve it. And it can relate to so many different areas. So it can relate to food. So you feel like you really want to have something and you get this kind of like bully in your head that's telling you don't deserve it. You can feel like you want affection, you want time to yourself, you want maybe a bigger life, right? Like you have a career goal or something that comes into your brain, and immediately there's this voice that comes in. The only way, like I said, I could think of it is like a bully. And immediately you start feeling shame around this wanting. And it's not just shame that you're feeling, but it's an instinct to hide the fact that you have this desire at all. And what happens is it's like it happens so quickly. It's like this feeling arises within you, the bully comes in, the voice comes to be like, no, and then you find yourself sabotaging it, right? So you find yourself sabotaging the whatever the desire is that you had. And if you do feel like you still want it, right? Like if the bully doesn't win and the sabotage doesn't win and you find yourself that you're still harping on it in your brain, there's this sense that the only way to get it is to earn it in some roundabout self-destructive way. And this can look like stealing food, and eating it, right? Like enjoying it and eat, or not even enjoying, but like being able to get the release of eating the food only if you steal it, or hiding snacks, binging in secret. And so if you notice, a lot of these behaviors come from a deep-rooted belief system that there's shame in desire. And what happens is that it leads to a self-betrayal in a lot of our values. Because I know for myself, and I know the women that I work with who chat with us in the mentorship about some of these things that they do, one of the most painful parts about it is that it doesn't align with their value system or their integrity to steal food from other people, to hide snacks, right? It doesn't align with their higher self and their higher vision of what their worthiness is. Because on one hand, you know that you're worthy, but on the other hand, there's this gap between letting yourself enjoy and letting yourself feel desire and letting yourself live from that place and what's actually happening, right? And these behaviors that kind of sabotage or create a dissonance between our value system and how we're behaving in our day-to-day. And so today I want to talk about why we do that. Because if you're listening to this and you're agreeing with me or you're resonating with this and you've thought to yourself, why do I keep doing this when I know better? I think you know by now that it's not that there's something wrong with you. It's just that you were never taught or you were never validated that your desire on its own, right, without needing to earn it, without needing to do some, sneaky stuff to get it, that your desire on its own was enough, right? You might never have actually let that land in your nervous system in your belief system. And reframing that belief system is extremely, extremely important for, for healing, especially our relationship with food, because that's specifically what we're talking about here. So let's go into it. Let's go into some of the, the backstory. So as women, and really it is more women than men. I know that some men may struggle with this as well, but, I speak primarily to women here. And as women, we've been taught to be gracious, be grateful, to want less, to need less, just to be less, or not necessarily to want or need less, but just not to make it someone else's problem, not to let it be so big in the universe. And so what we've been subconsciously trained to feel is that desire, even when it's subtle, is dangerous. It's dangerous for our safety in society. It's dangerous for our ability to feel like we belong. So what do? We downplay it. We convince ourselves that we're the problem, that we're, it's too, it's like we want too much. If we're talking about wanting more affection or wanting more, wanting a bigger job or something that's like a bigger life, we convince ourselves that, it's just not like it's show off, right? Like you're being a show off, and we downplay it. But the problem is as women, desire and like that inspiration, because that's what it really is. It's like a burst of creative energy that lives in our second chakra. Not to really get too much into that, but that's feminine energy, right? And so what happens is when we feel that like inspiration energy, that creative idea, that creative thought, that creative desire, that is our feminine energy. And if we immediately bully ourselves out of that and out of that space, out of that energy, what happens is that because feminine energy is a natural free-flowing energy within us, it doesn't disappear. It doesn't disappear. And that's something really important that we have to really recognize, is that energy doesn't disappear, it just moves. And it starts to show up in our relationship with food, with work, with how we try to earn rest and attention. We wait till we hit rock bottom before we allow ourselves to rest. We put ourselves in positions where, we're not creating the safest place for ourselves because on some level we feel like we have to be hard, we have to be like down bad in order to like really deserve anything, right? It's like we have this idea of what we deserve to, to enjoy, to have. And what's interesting and really important to understand is that because this energy doesn't go away, we have to learn how to re-relate to the energy, in the sense that even though this energy might feel very activating, it doesn't have to be veered. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be utilized in a way that hurts us, or in a way that creates self-abandonment. And so using food to express, using food to express our desire, because we think it's a safer way to do it. So using food, whether that's, the actual eating of food, or whether it's like the acquisition of food, right? So using eating behavior and food as a way to explore and express desire, that is not the most adaptive way to do it. Right? That's not the most adaptive way to do it, because it ends up creating this abandonment with ourselves that only has repercussions later on in many different areas. So if we think about it even deeper, many of us don't just want more, right? We feel like we're not allowed to have more. And if we don't believe we're worthy just because we want it, we create the conditions to make ourselves feel like we've earned it. Okay. And this is how it becomes much deeper rooted. Because the conditions are often laced with shame, because it doesn't align with how we see ourselves, with our values. And a lot of times, especially when we, use food to express and explore desire and, wanting, it's not even about the taste of the food. It's about the rush. So when we use food as a way to express and explore, it is about the rush. It's because you feel like you're getting away with something, right? You feel like you're finally winning. And unless there's struggle, secrecy, or danger attached to it, your belief system can't reconcile wanting. And that is what's happening here. Because if we kind of zoom out and we really explore the deeper underbelly of this, what would happen if you just gave yourself permission to eat what you wanted openly, or to ask for rest, or to ask for affection, or to ask to take up space, right? Like, say, put your name in the hat for that job, right? What would happen there? That would feel too easy, right? It wouldn't feel real, because it would feel too easy, because your belief system and nervous system is used to earning and struggle and danger and putting yourself in dangerous situations in order to earn something. And just permission and asking and advocating for yourself is too easy. It's too exposed. It's too vulnerable. Right? We tell ourselves that we have to suffer. We have to suffer a little. We have to sneak a little. We have to hustle just to earn what we wanted in the first place, and what we deserve to try to claim for ourselves, because we believe the desire alone isn't enough to activate us, to move us. And this is how self-betrayal and self-abandonment becomes a part of your coping strategy and becomes a habit. Right? Self-betrayal becomes a part of the cycle. I remember what it felt like to be stuck in the cycle of emotional eating. I tried every diet out there, counting, tracking, restricting, but nothing ever worked. Food controlled my life, my thoughts, and I constantly felt guilty after eating. But once I learned how to heal the emotional triggers behind my eating and trust my body, everything changed. I stopped obsessing over food, the weight started coming off naturally, and I found real freedom in how I ate and lived. So, I created the Sober Eating year-long mentorship to help other women experience the same transformation so you can stop battling with food, you can lose weight without deprivation, and you can feel confident in your body again. In this mentorship, you'll have access to my proven nervous system rewiring method. You'll have access to live coaching with me, weekly accountability, and a community of women who truly understand your journey. You'll also have free access to my signature programs, the Emotional Eating Solution and Decoding Permanent Weight Loss, valued at $2,000. Click the link in the show notes to explore the mentorship today. You don't have to do this alone. I'll be right there with you every step of the way. And here's the crazy wild thing is that we as women often start betraying ourselves so young that we don't even realize that we're doing it. Some examples are saying yes when we mean no, laughing, right? Laughing something off, even when it's making us feel awkward or bad, right? Acting like chill or the cool girl, right? Prioritizing someone else's needs over our own. Maybe you got criticized for eating certain things when you were younger, and so, you just kind of started, secretly sneaking it because you didn't want that criticism. And we become hypervigilant. We become women who anticipate other people's emotions, but feel connected from our own. And there is a very big distinction between empathy and hypervigilance. And, with the women I've worked with, this is something that we work on. Right? I get so many, comments and questions in the weekly Q&As that I do in the mentorship. And in the questions, people will give me context and they'll be like, I'm an empath and ... And so much of what I hear when I listen, when I read the ... part is that this isn't empathy. This is a codependence. This is hypervigilance because you've been trained to think about other people's emotions before yours, right? You've been trained to think about what you acting in and advocating for what you want and putting yourself out in the world, using your energy for your desire. You're thinking about how that's going to impact someone else and what the backlash is going to be for you. And that disconnection from our own feelings, our own experience, our own integrity with our true wants is what drives us to soothe with food. And not because you're not disciplined, because to be honest, so many of the women that I talk to about this stuff, they have such strong discipline in other areas of their lives. And so this isn't about a flaw in your character. It's just because the food situation, whether it's like the volume amount of food that you're eating, so binging is an example of that, or whether it's like the sneaking and stealing food, so it's more of like the behavior and the danger part of it. It's the only area that you feel that you can explore wanting and getting, right? It's not just the wanting, it's the getting, right? And like we said before, in that place, we often act in ways that are out of alignment with our higher selves, with our goals, and with our values. So let's talk about what the path forward is. Now that we understand the context, the deeper root, how it's not your fault, that is the first step. The first step of the way forward is not to shame yourself out of wanting. right? And not to put more guardrails on yourself. What you need to do is practice permission. Okay, this is a skill. Okay, it is a skill to give yourself permission because it requires you to live in a place of yes. And yes, without the danger. Yes, without the earning. Yes, without the over explaining. And a nervous system that's not used to that, right? A nervous system that's used to fight or flight but definitely is not going to be comfortable with permission. Okay, so this is a practice that you have to start to do so that you can build tolerance for, so you can build tolerance for your own wants and you can integrate those wants into your life in all ways, right? Whether that's food, whether that's career, whether that's love, whether that's affection, right? And so you can integrate that want, that desire into your wholeness, into your being without it creating chaos. Right? It's like when you think about conversations sometimes that people have when they're building a business, right? A lot of times people think that people are afraid of failure, but a lot of times people are afraid of success. Right? People letting ourselves feel good and giving ourselves allowance, giving ourselves permission. It is a big training to live in a space of true self-worth. Okay, and so some things that you can do to start to practice permission is, start within yourself, right? So before you start taking your, your practice outside of you, start with yourself, right? So you might journal your desires, your wants without filtering them, right? Just take a piece of paper and just start writing your desires. Notice how many times you might censor yourself and try to make it sound less crazy. And then say to yourself, who am I censoring this for? No one's reading this. And you're going to see so quickly how ingrained that, that bully and that critic is. And you can practice then, ignoring the critic, right? So just because the critic comes doesn't mean you failed. It's great. The critic is going to come. But you could say, "Hi, critic, you're not real," and then continue writing. But the only way to build the skill of giving yourself permission is when you get that resistance to keep doing it anyway. Okay. Another example could be letting yourself eat the thing you actually want instead of eating the safe thing now and then binging on it later. Right? That might be more challenging if you are still a little bit more, if you're still struggling with some of the, the nervous system, impulse control issues around food. So you'll have to take, that one with a grain of salt. But eventually you will have to practice that to heal. Right? You'll have to practice, eating something, you have a desire and eating it. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go to the grocery store and buy a whole bag of it. You can just go and, get a single serving of something that requires you to leave your house. And then, you get one serving and then you eat it. And then observe how your nervous system responds to that. You're going to get so much feedback from that you're going to realize is probably very over-exaggerated for the actual experience that's happening in the moment. But this is a first step. starts training your nervous system to feel safe in permission. Okay, because we are learning that wanting, having desire, letting ourselves get and have that desire doesn't make you bad, doesn't make us bad. And having what you want doesn't make you greedy, right? It makes you honest. And so when you stop betraying your appetite, right? And now you understand that we're talking about appetite, not just when it comes to food, but when it comes to life, right? When you stop betraying your appetite, you start coming home to your whole self, which is what we want. That's where the freedom is. That's where the peace is, right? And that's why we end up following all these like crazy diets and meal plans, because we think that that's what's going to give us permission. But ultimately, we want the permission to come from inside of us. And this is how you start to do it. You start accepting and building the skill of permission to want. Because the more permission you give yourself to have, to want, to take up space, the less you'll need to hide, to steal, to binge, right? The less you need to do those things to feel alive. Okay, so please know this, that there is nothing shameful about your desire, about your hunger, right? Hunger related to food and eating, and hunger related to just your life in general and your needs and your wants, right? Because it's not just about the food. It's about reclaiming your right to have wants without punishment, without secrecy, without earning it through self-denial, through self-abandonment, right? Because you don't have to wait until you hit rock bottom, until you're exhausted, or until you're starving, right? Or until you've put yourself in a dangerous position where you have no other choice to meet your own needs, right? You don't have to make it hard, right? You're allowed to want. Okay? Permission to want. That is what I'm going to leave you with today. So thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to leave us a comment on Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, we appreciate you. Please like and subscribe. And you can find all of our episodes on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. And until next time, I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating Unwrapped.